This is the new updated PUMA King Ultimate for 2024. But does updated also mean better? Well, in today's video, I'm gonna tell you what the new King does well, and also not so well, to hopefully help you decide if you should buy a pair from Unisport in the link right up there or in the description. Because as always, I'm JayMike, and this is my review of the new King Ultimate. So the King Ultimate was introduced last year with a synthetic leather upper called K Better using recycled materials. And PUMA have continued down that road with the new model. But they have also been tweaking it, and PUMA say that they've given the new King an updated K Better upper here, which, according to them at least, is even softer and even more leather-like. Then there's also these Gripcontrol 3D ribs, which, in their words, give you an amplified touch. There's a new heel package, and they've also updated the last, so the shape that the boot is built over, which really impacts the way it fits you. And I think especially that is gonna be interesting to a lot of people, given that the first King Ultimate was a rather tight, snug-fitting boot. Now, my first impression of the new K Better upper here was that it actually feels a lot like what they used on the first King Ultimate, only with a slightly more natural leather-like grain to it, I think. I'll also be honest, my initial response getting it in hand was that it felt a little bit more rigid and, synthetic-y than I had anticipated. It's definitely not stiff, but just feels a bit more, structured than I would think, given the fact that it's supposed to feel like, or at least emulate, the feeling of a leather upper. But to be fair to the K Better upper here, it does soften up quite well after breaking it in and just having a little bit of patience with it. Because once the heat and the moisture from your foot starts to work with the upper, it does become quite malleable and soft. But it also leads me to addressing the elephant in the room here. Does it feel like natural leather? No. No, it doesn't. Not really. But look, there's more to that statement, because I actually think that K Better as a material does pretty well. It molds nicely to the shape of your foot, with a little bit of breaking time at least, and there's no hint of overstretching. But it just doesn't give me the leather vibe. And if you've ever worn a leather boot, you know what I'm talking about. Basically, to me, it just feels like a pretty solid, thin synthetic with a leather grain finish to it. Think the Nike Mercurial Vapor 9 with that Taitian OLM12 upper that also had a leather grain finish to it, and to be fair, is really, really soft. I've also worn this a lot, so it's really well broken in, but let's hope that the King Ultimate can get there one day. But look, all of this doesn't mean that the King Ultimate and K Better is uncomfortable. Quite the contrary, actually. It fits really well, again with a bit of patience. But I also need you to understand that if you're specifically looking for that padding and softness and slight stretching of a leather upper that only a leather boot can give you, the King Ultimate is just not that. But if you can ignore the whole leather replacement spiel, I think K Better is a solid choice. It's a solid material. Especially because the fit in general works pretty well with me. At least, especially when it comes to the comfort. So the heel here has this thicker, really soft ortho-light padding that feels a little bit like memory foam. And it just goes in, it holds your heel and foot really well in place, but just in an extremely comfortable way that almost feels a little bit like luxurious. It is also on the fat, slightly chunky side, which is a bit of a downer, but damn, do I think that it feels good. So, I can kind of live with the chunkiness, especially because it just feels miles better in terms of both fit and lock-in compared to the previous King Ultimate. It's very, very nice. Another thing is that there's just in general more width, especially in the midfoot, but also in the forefoot, meaning that the new King Ultimate will just appeal and accommodate to a lot more foot shapes, and in general just feel a little less crammed in and just like around the foot than the first model. You do, however, still have that relatively low pointy toe box, meaning that you get a rather one-to-one snuggish fit in the toes. Now, I don't personally mind that, I kind of like it, but if you're someone that doesn't care for it, it's something you'll have to just power through and live with until the upper is broken in and soften up and is starting to work with the shape of your feet. Now, in terms of the sizing, I did what I always do with PUMA, went with my usual UK6 25 centimeters, but actually found it to be just a little bit too tight. And going up half a size to 25.5 centimeters was just, it was a much, much better, more comfortable fit for me. And that is what the King Ultimate is about. Now, if you want that really tight squeezed fit, going through the size, by all means do it, but half a size up for me was the way to go. In terms of midfoot lockdown, I found it to be middle of the road, okay. As I mentioned, the lock-in in the heel is pretty good. And I also like how there's no dead space, for me at least, around the heel. No big opening and a pretty enclosed feel around the heel here. Now the area also does have one of the big red flags on the boot, but I'm gonna get back to that later. But when it comes to the fit, I do think that the King, it makes some choices, and I'm a big fan of that because it feels like Puma have simply focused a bit more on the comfort. And yes, it sacrifices a little bit on that sleek, streamlined sensation that you got more of in the first King Ultimate, but at the end of the day, I find this to be more comfortable, and that's what a lot of the players wearing the King wants. So it's a good choice.
As for the touch, the King has these Gripcontrol 3D ribs with small ridges on the medial side to give you a bit of texture and solidity on the ball.
Now, I'll be honest, my immediate reaction was, hell nah, because my mind just raced back to the pretty dreadful King Platinum 21, which was just, yeah. But thankfully, to me at least, these are not really a problem. In fact, I actually like having just a little bit of texture and tactility on an otherwise pretty smooth upper, and especially on the instep here, there's just a little bit of, solidity when you pass the ball. Now, obviously also low pointed toe box means a pretty nimble feel and touch on the ball. And as for the touch, I would say that it feels pretty balanced or harmonious, if you will, in the sense that you do feel the ball relatively closely, but there is also just that natural thickness of the material, which, granted, it's not this really soft, almost pillory, padded leather feel, but I will say that if you close your eyes and touch the ball, it will feel relatively close at least to what a thin leather upper would, in terms of thickness. So that's at least something.
And then there's the outsole, which is the same PUMA plate that was used last year with a soft forefoot and a stable midfoot.
It is super no nonsense. Conical studs, not the most aggressive snapback in the world, but a really solid stable midfoot, and just overall is really easy to wear. It really doesn't steal the show, but it won't make anyone that mad either, I reckon. Works.
However, speaking of things that would make me mad, here are 4 annoying things that you'll also need to know about.
Now, first of all, as I mentioned earlier, come closer, we have these little sharp edges right where the stitch and turn collar meets the knit here, which for some inexplicable reason have been left to be really almost sharp and pointy to the point where they just kind of dig into and rub against my foot when I move it. And that's something I could definitely have done without. Now, it might just be, you could say, that I've been super unlucky with this particular pair, but I've tried 3 others than this one, and it's been bugging me to various extents on all of them. And then there is the sizing, where I'm just confused, really. This is 25.5 centimeters long, according to the label, but somehow this is still shorter than my Puma Ultra Carbon, which is 25 centimeters on the label. Now, Puma, how are we supposed to then find the right size when we can't even, yes, all the other brands sometimes also have a little bit of a weird different sizing, but they're consistently weird across all the silos. Just fix it. It must be easier than this. And then there is the price. Now, the King Ultimate is now 220 euros, which is 10 euros more than the previous version. And I guess that's fair because it's a better boot. 10 euros. It's 10 euros, but it also brings it closer to the competition, which raises the expectation of the boot. And it's just more expensive is never good. And finally, like I mentioned before, I like K better as an upper, especially with a bit of breaking time. But if we're talking about it as a leather replacement, it's just honestly not there yet. So if you want a leather boot,
these aren't the droids you're looking for.
These aren't the droids we're looking for.
And that's what's funny about the King. See, to me, the King Ultimate wants to be one thing, which it kind of fails at, if I'm honest, but then it's successful at being another. This pretty well-rounded, kind of sleek, but still comfortable boot that has a modern feel to it with a pretty nice synthetic upper. And Whether you'll like it or not really depends on what you're looking for specifically. That also means that I can see this enraging some people a lot, but also making others very, very happy. So if you're in that latter category and you want to try it, you can buy it from Unisport in the link right up there or in the description. But before you do that, tell me what you think of the updated and potentially better King Ultimate in the comment section right down below. Make sure you subscribe to the channel with the notifications on. Learn some skills right down there. With those words, I'll be signing off. Cheerio.